And welcome to The Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. We are going to be diving into A Course in Miracles, and as we do, we will start with a review of the preceding lessons. And I'm going to plug in my laptop. All right. Lesson 35. My mind is part of God's. I am very holy. Lesson 36. My holiness envelops everything I see. Lesson 37, my holiness blesses the world. Lesson 38, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. Lesson 39, my holiness is my salvation. Lesson 40, I am blessed as a son of God. Lesson 41, God goes with me wherever I go. Lesson 42, God is my strength. Vision is his gift. Lesson 43, God is my source. I cannot see apart from him. Lesson 44, God is the light in which I see. Lesson 45, God is the mind with which I forgive. No, which I think. Lesson 46, God is the love in which I forgive. Lesson 47, God is the strength in which I trust. Lesson 48, there is nothing to fear. Lesson 49, God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Lesson 50, I am sustained by the love of God. Lesson 61, I am the light of the world. Lesson 62, forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. Lesson 63, the light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. Lesson 64, let me not forget my function. Lesson 65, my only function is the one God gave me. Lesson 66, my happiness and my function are one. Lesson 67, love created me like itself. Lesson 68, love holds no grievances. Lesson 69, my grievances hide the light of the world in me. Lesson 70, my salvation comes from me. Lesson 71, God's plan for salvation will work. Before we dive into this lesson, I actually feel compelled to do something a little bit different and just kind of disrupt our flow right now. And I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to say a prayer. I'm going to say a prayer for us this morning. I feel the need for myself to just do that. So you're welcome to join me or just wait. God, I thank you for this 71st day of the year. God, it is a wonderful, beautiful thing for us to be alive today. And God, it's something that I know I take for granted. Just the fact that we get another day, the fact that we get this opportunity to read this lesson together. God, I pray that we would not take the ordinary miracles for granted today. God, that we would live just awake and aware of how good you are. And man, Father, I just ask that we would focus on that and that we would really lend our ear to your voice this morning. God, that you would teach us, that we would come to know you in real relationship, God, not who our pastors or parents or priests said that you were, but who you really are. God, I pray that we would be willing to have undone that which is not true. God, I pray that we would be soft-hearted and open today and that we would be just ready to receive. God, I pray that we would receive love and that love would come in and flow through us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. Well, good morning. I'm going to go ahead and just block a couple of you guys here in the chat so that we can keep moving forward and not be distracted. Steve, good morning. Jack Corey, good morning. Goated, Keller. Guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into reading this lesson in miracles. So that's what we're going to be doing this morning, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Lesson 71, only God's plan for salvation will work. You may not realize that the ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God. It is this plan in which you believe. Since it is the opposite of God's, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course, yet after we have considered just what the ego's plan is, perhaps you will realize that however preposterous it may be, you do believe in it. The ego's plan for salvation centers around holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external circumstance or event were changed, you would be saved. Wow. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. The change of mind necessary for salvation is thus demanded of everyone and everything except yourself. The role assigned to your own mind in this plan, then, is to determine what, other than itself, must change if you are to be saved. According to this insane plan, any perceived source of salvation is acceptable, provided that it will not work. This ensures that the fruitless search will continue, for the illusion persists that, although this hope has always failed, there is still grounds for hope in other places and in other things. Another person will yet serve better. Another situation will yet offer success. Such is the ego's plan for your salvation. Surely you can see how it is in strict accord with the ego's basic doctrine. Seek, but do not find. For what could more surely guarantee that you will not find salvation than to channelize all your efforts in searching for it where it is not? God's plan for salvation works simply because by following his direction, you seek for salvation where it is. But if you are to succeed, as God promises you will, you must be willing to seek there only. Otherwise, your purpose is divided, and you will attempt to follow two plans for salvation that are diametrically opposed in all ways. The result can only bring confusion, misery, and a deep sense of failure and despair. How can you escape all of this? Very simply. The idea for today is the answer. Only God's plan for salvation will work. There can be no real conflict about this because there is no possible alternative to God's plan that will save you. His is the only plan that is certain in its outcome. His is the only plan that must succeed. Let us practice recognizing this certainty today, and let us rejoice that there is an answer to what seems to be a conflict with no resolution possible. All things are possible with God. Salvation must be yours because of his plan, which cannot fail. Begin the longer practice periods today by thinking about today's idea and realizing it contains two parts, each making equal contribution to the whole. God's plan for your salvation will work and other plans will not. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at the second part. It is inherent to the first. And in the first is your full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. They have led to depression and anger, but God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Remembering this, let us devote the remainder of this practice periods to asking God to reveal his plan for us. Ask him very specifically, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say and to whom? Give God full charge of the rest of the practice period and let him tell you what needs to be done by you in his plan for your salvation. He will answer in proportion to your willingness to hear his voice. Refuse not to hear. The very fact that you are doing the exercise proves that you have some willingness to listen. This is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. In the shorter practice periods, tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only his will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only his plan will work. Try to remember today's idea some 6 or 7 times an hour. That's a lot. There could be no better way to spend a half minute or less than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. Only God's plan for salvation will work. Y'all, it's interesting. It's interesting that there's so much emphasis on associating the grievances with ego. You know, the holding on to, I just love this concept of holding somebody by like their neck collar and saying, pay me what you owe me. we're tethering ourselves to them. We're actually attaching ourselves to them. And so by holding on to grievances, it really is a holding on. We're not actually allowing ourselves to be free. We're not allowing ourselves to be able to walk in the plan for salvation that God has. And so in us being able to move forward in freedom, to really be able to move forward into even the future, in this present moment, the past, if we're holding somebody by their neck collar, that's the past, because that didn't happen right now. That happened back then. And so the question for each one of us is, can I let go? And that's where, I just love this book by David Hawkins, Letting Go, because it pertains to every single area of our life. Can I let go of the outcomes? So as I'm looking to the future and chasing an outcome, can I let go of that outcome and really focus on being present here in this moment, so that the tasks, the process itself is what changes me? I can evolve in the moment and allow for growth and healing and change as I'm pursuing an ideal outcome. But I've remained unattached, because here's the thing. If we're chasing and pursuing the future, or living and holding on to the past, we're not here. We're not able to really be present with the people we love, being able to be cultivated and changed here in this present moment, to really enjoy beauty. There's so much propensity for joy if we allow for it. If we're allowing ourselves to be physically here, where are you physically? I did long distance for a little bit, and it was hard, but it was constantly bringing me out of the present. It was constantly taking me to where my darling was. And frankly, it was really distracting. And that's not the ideal. So what I actually asked for was that we wouldn't talk throughout the day, and we would only talk in the evening or in the morning, where it was like designated periods and no texting, because constantly picking up my phone was a distraction. It would take me out of the present moment. And y'all, most anything that takes us out of the present moment, it can lead to comparison. It can lead to discontent. It can lead to apathy. Most anything that distracts us from the here and now has some semblance of a negative result. So I'm not making that a black and white statement. For me, on this device, most things on that device can cause discontent, comparison, or apathy. And myriad of other emotions. There's fun and humor on there. Either way, it's not keeping us here in the present moment. The present moment now is me in my little home and doing my work and talking with you all, etc. So where are we? Where has God placed you and me in our lives today? Where have we chosen? What path have we chosen to show up on? And how do we really need to honor that and make the best use of that? And so the question for us today is, are we holding on to the past or being attached to outcomes in the future, so that it's either way, it's pulling us out of this moment? I love this. David says you can't be present either when you focus on imaginary stuff. Yeah, James says comparison is the killer of joy. Y'all, it is so wild how much that is so true. I think Theodore Roosevelt says comparison is the thief of joy, and it comes in and like robs us. I've actually seen this happen. I hit a milestone for me in a particular area, and immediately my ego thought, oh, I wonder, but I bet other people have gotten there faster. And I just had to be like, nope, this is where I'm at, and I'm really excited about this for me, rather than comparing myself to other people, because it is interesting how much we default. Vovoda, I'm going to go ahead and just put you on timeout because we don't talk like that. But thanks for joining. So with this whole question of what grievances are the ego holding on to that is effectively making us think that if I could just have that reconciled, I would feel better. My life would be easier. The one line that she says here that I just think is so good. Okay. The ego's plan for salvation centers on holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, if some external source or event were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside of yourself. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. The change of mind necessary for salvation is thus demanded for everyone and everything except yourself. Y'all, this is what's wild. We are effectively being the victim in our own lives the more we are holding on to grievances. I'm angry, I'm upset, my life is this way because of that person. Versus I'm actually going to sit in the driver's seat of my life and I get to choose my response. We can't control the stimulus, but we can have the power to choose and then respond. Viktor Frankl says this: in between stimulus and response is choice. And choice is the greatest of all human freedoms. And he wrote this from a German concentration camp. So we cannot control the stimulus, but we can control our response and also the choice effectively of who do we want to be? How do we want to show up? Y'all, grievances are probably one of the most deadly things. So, and I've been talking with somebody about this, how do we maintain, maybe it's justice, literally, like sometimes we actually do need to go to court, but we're not emotionally tethered to that person, blaming them in grievance with them, where we're able to execute justice, but it's from a place of, and it's true, it's possible, from a place of love versus from a place of fear. I'm going to go ahead and jump here in the chat here for a moment. All right. Yeah. Handy Andy, some nasty trolls in here. Handy Andy, we're going to be changing up a few things on our end in the next couple of weeks. And Harry, it says, why is she banning people? They need to hear the word. I'm actually not banning. I'm just preventing them from being able to comment in the chat because they're being inappropriate. So I'm happy for all y'all to hang out. Brian says, there is nothing bigger than ourselves. Carpenter, hello from Canada. I love this. Steve says, he also said, walk softly and carry a big stick. Yes. So when we're talking about letting go of grievances, the goal is that grievance and our attachment to it is not the thing that's driving us, but actually we're able to deliver justice from a place of effectively like purity, where I'm not actually being corroded and colored and corrupted from within, but I actually have let that go, but I can still execute on the justice of the matter. And like I said, going to court, making sure that the truth is spoken, casting the light on truth. Letting go of grievances does not mean that we let go of the truth. In fact, that's more powerful, to be able to allow for our response to the stimulus to be right and just and even holy. And man, does that deliver more power and more justice than most anything that fear or ego would have us do. Just jumping back in here. Sammy, hello. Oh, the gray one says, is Sammy here? I saw Sammy's name and I was like, oh, Sammy, but then it wasn't Sammy's handle. I haven't seen Sammy in a couple of days. You know what? I was talking to someone yesterday and I was like, I haven't seen him in a bit. So hopefully, Sammy, if you're watching, we love you. My whole expanse. Isn't that funny? It's so true. Jason, thanks for joining. John Lench, good to see you. Aaron, hello. Jaden says, who is Sammy? Sammy actually joined the show probably about a month or two ago, and it was the date of his anniversary of when he broke his neck and has been in a wheelchair ever since and is a quadriplegic. And he'll come on the show sometimes, and just, I can't, honestly, that is one of my biggest fears. Like, I just cannot imagine. And so he's a hero of mine, that he's still showing up and doing the work, even though he's been through such a horrible accident. So yeah, I'm proud of him. All right. So let's go ahead and just jump right back into the lesson for today. And then we're actually going to wrap up early. Y'all, yesterday we talked about this before. We have so much power to choose, and that's our responsibility. Our default ego looks outward and blames other people. Radical responsibility goes inward. It goes inward to realize that you and I have the power so much to choose our response. And so when she talks about salvation is in you, that's the impression I'm getting. And that's the way I'm interpreting it, that like we have the power to choose. Am I going to choose the salvation that God is offering me, or am I going to choose the salvation that ego is offering me? Ego is always going to fail. God's is always going to prevail. And so whose am I going to choose? And I get the power to choose. And so the more you and I are taking time to actually cultivate stillness and silence in our lives, to allow for us to be able to ensure that we're good, to check in and how am I actually doing? Am I able to, all right, Junior, I'm going to go ahead and just put you on timeout. I'm sorry. That was just so unkind. Y'all, this opportunity to choose, who am I going to be for every single one of us? Who am I going to be today? It's one thing to hide behind a chat and, be nasty or be unkind. It's another thing to go out in person. And the thing is do you actually want to be that person? The way that you're showing up here in the chat, the way that we show up, do I want to show up this way? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? What is my own ideal for my life? And what does God say about me? Because y'all, here's the thing. Am I or you even dreaming big enough over who we think we can be? Do I have a high enough standard? Do I have high enough standard for me? Because usually when we start acting out and we start behaving in ways that frankly we're usually quietly ashamed of, it's because nobody called us higher to begin with. It's because other people told us that we're small, or other people told us that we aren't more than that. And so I really would encourage each one of us to consider that question of, who do I want to be? And am I dreaming big enough for myself? Michelangelo has this quote that says that the tragedy in life is not that we're reaching so far for the stars and then we fail to fulfill on it, but that we're actually not dreaming big enough and we actually achieve our goals. So I would encourage you guys today, as you're considering who do you want to be, and I really would encourage you. We don't take enough time to think about this. Who do you want to be? What lights you up? What do you feel called to do? Because what better way to spend these precious days and this precious life than doing something that is exactly why we're here. You were uniquely made for a reason. Every single one of us was. And for us to really be able to contribute to this bigger picture that is effectively the world and God's plan for the world, how do I need to take a step up and hold myself to a higher standard so that I can actually deliver on that amazing mission that I'm here to fulfill on? Nobody else can do what you have the ability to do. And so, are you dreaming big enough for yourself? Or are you allowing the past of what other people have said to you about you to be your differentiator and to be the naysayer of your life? Or are you actually the one calling the shots? This concept of, my salvation is in me. Yesterday I took a moment to pause because I was like, oh, I don't like the sound of that. But the way that I'm reading yesterday's lesson and today's, it's like, man, we have the power to choose. And therefore am I going to choose something higher, something better, something even more, man, like maybe you got to move. Maybe you got to move away from the friends and culture that you're currently immersed in. Maybe you actually need to go get outside. Stop hanging out with the people that you're hanging out with online. What is the change that we need to make in our lives to really make sure that we're living in accordance with the very best we possibly can? Y'all, this is a high calling to live at the top echelon of what is possible for you and me. And how do you do that? How do you actually live in accordance? For me, I have to wake up early. This morning, I went live at 5:30 a.m., which was, it was a good reason to get out of bed in the morning. And also, doing this Course in Miracles with you guys, that's been really, really meaningful to me. And so how are we choosing activities, choosing habits, and also removing ourselves from situations and times where it's actually dragging us down? It's causing us to act. And when I think about alignment, it's like, okay, who do I want to be? And then bringing my behaviors, my beliefs, my actions in alignment underneath that, the hierarchy. But then ultimately, who does God say I am? Because, God's actually probably going to have a bigger dream for me than I ever will. And when I'm taking, James says, small steps, if we're taking the small steps and just doing the next right thing, we're not attached to some big grandiose outcome. It's just about what's the right step for today. So to that point, y'all, thank you so much for joining today. I am so glad you all did show up, and I'm so grateful for each one of you. Tonight, let me just check. Tonight, we're going to be going live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And I want to see if I've got a guest today. Let me see. I do. Oh, yay. Yeah, I actually have a pretty cool guest tonight. So come and join us, 8:30 p.m. Eastern for the Knowing Show. I will see you soon. I love this. Claude Maple says, I removed all of my toxic friendships. Now my best friend is my pet carp. Honestly, sometimes you got to do that. It's like, man, that's usually where we have to start is the elimination. The elimination round. When I was thinking about who do I want to be, I actually started with who do I not want to be? And just getting really clear on that. What do you not want? Who is outside of alignment? Even just, okay, well, I know that I don't want to be complaining. I know that I don't want to gossip. I know that I don't want, okay, list of these things. Okay, then what is the antithesis of that? Then what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Eric, Bad Brother, Raven, good to see you. Raven, you won last night trivia, so make sure you reach out and get your prize. Abraham, Dawn, good to see you. Jaden, Sam, y'all, thank you so much for Harry. Elimination of things in your life that's not at all in alignment with who you want to be. And you know what? Well, I won't even get to your next part, but y'all, thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful day. Only God's plan for salvation will work, not ego's plan. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. Jaden, I love that. I love that you're here and you're hanging out with us. I think that part of what makes all of our stories is leaning into our experience and leaning into the past and leaning into every single thing that has proceeded to get us here. And it's like, man, this beautiful cocktail of what makes your story and your testimony so incredibly compelling. And it's not about avoiding the past or what happened, but how do I actually leverage that? Talk about alchemy, the process of turning lead to gold. How do I alchemize the past? How do I alchemize the story? And maybe even the people in the past are the very people I'm called to serve. So I just saw my sweet mama join. Good morning, mama. I love you so much. Y'all, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for joining. We will talk to you tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Talk soon.